Hi, this is Edward Troxel. In today's tutorial, we're going to go through the timeline and look at every video event on the timeline, and then we're going to look at every effect that is on that video event, and then we are going to look at every parameter of those effects to see what the individual parameters are on. And then next week we're going to continue on with this and go through all of the various keyframes and the values of each one of those settings for these effects. Please note that this only works with the OFX effects, so if you're not using the OpenFX effects, I strongly recommend that you do so. The parameters cannot be read on the DirectX effects, so we really need to use the OpenF effects. So let's see how we can do this. First, let's take a look at a project here. Notice I have just one event on the timeline, but if we look at the FX, we will see that I have several effects added here. Let me expand that up a little bit. And on this particular one is Vegas Vignette. None of these are keyframed. These are just the settings for the vignette. If we go back to Spherize, then you'll notice that the amount here is keyframed, and the horizontal and vertical are both keyframed. And you can see the keyframes listing down here where the various keyframes are. And then we have a Gaussian blur. We'll notice that the horizontal range is keyframed and the channel's red is keyframed. So here's the red, here it is on, here it is off, and then the value of the horizontal range expands over time. So we can see we do have a few things keyframed, we have several things not keyframed, and we have 3 effects added. So let's look at our script that will let us go through these effects. We're using the same base script that we've used in the past. All the way down to here should look very, very common. So now what I'm doing is I'm setting up a string value so we can look at the values that we read. Then for each track in the project tracks, I'm going to check to see is this video track, because I only want to look at video events right now. I don't want to look at audio events. Then for every event on that track, so for each track event on mytrack.events, we're going to then convert that event to a video event using this line. Now I'm going to scroll up. Now we want to go through and look at every effect on that video event. So for every effect, which I'm setting a variable called effect, in the video event.effects, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show that this is track number, and then we'll get our index plus 1, because if you remember, our indexes are 0 based and the numbers we see on the screen are 1 based. So track 1 internally is actually track 0, so this way we'll display it's track 1 and it's the event at, and we're going to show the starting position. Now if this is an OFX effect, then I need to get the OFX effect, which I'm going to call OFX, and it is just effect.OFXEffect. Then I want to go through every parameter in that effect. So for each OFX parameter type of variable called OFXParm in OFX.parameters. So that will let me go through every parameter. Now there's some parameters I really don't want to look at. First of all, we'll have one called a name called presets. We'll have a label called preset. I don't want to look at what is the list of presets. Then I'll have one called page. We don't want to look at that because that is not something that will contain values or parameters that we need to look at. The next one I don't want to look at, I don't want to look at a group. Many of these effects have groups. And then I don't want to look at any buttons that are on there. So if it's called a push button, I don't want to look at it either. So I am skipping all of those. So if it is not that, and it is not this, and it is not this, and it is not this, then we're going to go ahead and look at it. So here is where we're going to actually look at it. So I'm going to add to my variable that I created up here, my S. I'm going to get the effect, and I'm going to get the effect.description that will tell us which effect it is. Then I'm going to show the parameter name, the parameter label. Believe it or not, those are different. In many cases they are the same, but in many cases they are different. And then I want to look and see what type of parameter is this. So we're looking at a lot of different information here. So with this script right here, let's run it and see what we get. So here we have on track 1 the event at 0, which is the event we have on the timeline. You can see we have an effect called Gaussian blur, and its the first parameter name is horizontal range with no spaces. Its label is horizontal range with a space, and it is a type double parameter. Then we have vertical range, which is also of type double. Then we have 4 other ones that are all of type Boolean. First one is R, second one is G, third one is B, and the fourth one is A. Those are the parameter names that we look at, but the labels that you see on the screen are red, green, blue, and alpha. So we'll click on OK and go to the next effect. Now we have the spherize effect. The first parameter name is center, and the label is center, and it is a double 2D. And then we have amount, which is a double, scaling horizontal, which the label is just horizontal, is of type double, scaling vertical with the label of vertical of type W, and then scaling proportional with a label of proportional of type Boolean. The next effect is the vignette effect. So the parameter name is outer. The label that is actually used is outer radius. It's of type double. Then we have inner, which is the inner radius of type double. Then the aspect of type double. The center, which is a double 2D. That basically means it has 2 double values, one for an X and one for a Y. Then we have rotation of type double, feather of type double, color, which is of type RGBA, and then a Boolean named invert. And so that is how we can go through all of the effects on each event on the timeline, and that also shows us how to drill down into the OFXEffect effect part and look at all the different parameters that are available to us. In the next one, we're going to dig a little farther down and actually learn how to get the values of each of those parameters, and if there's keyframing involved, we'll get the values for each keyframe. Please sign up at www.JETDV.com and subscribe on YouTube to get further notifications on when new videos are presented.